Talk shoes. Recorded live.
Hello and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week we return to a retrospective we've let sit for a while, steeping, if you will, and we're back with the new 2016 Ghostbusters, starring Kristen Wiig, Kate McKinnon, Melissa McCarthy, and Leslie Jones. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, which is very possible because it is in the theaters as we speak, we're going to be talking about this movie from the perspective of horror fans who have seen it. And we're going to talk about the cameos. We're going to talk about secrets that you may not want to know about. So warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, author of The Iron Thane, an epic in the world of Shakespeare's Macbeth, available now in Kindle and paper. With me from Austin is, after weeks of absence, Mr. Tony Salvaggio, lead singer of the band Deserts of Mars and bassist of the band Rise from Fire, co-creator of the comic Psychom from Tokyopop, and Clockworks from Humanoids, which is coming out at the end of this summer in English, and I'm super excited about that. Welcome back, Tony.
Yay, Tony.
Hey, thanks for having me back. I'm glad to be back. I mean, I enjoyed being in Scotland, and that was really cool, but I did miss the podcast.
During the Brexit, no less. Good timing.
During Brexit, I somehow summoned a bat, evidently.
Yeah.
So that's
Did it look like Donald Trump?
No, that would have been interesting.
The bat thing is sounds terrifying, but kind of hilarious from my perspective personally.
It's bizarre. When a bat suddenly appears in the living room of the cottage you're staying in, like, I never had any kind of anything that prepared me for, like, hey, suddenly a bat where you live. And they're small and they fly around in circles, and that's great. But like, what do I do now that there's a bat here? What do I do? The answer is open the door and then shut the door to the living room, and hopefully bat flies out. But it was certainly like putting down your Vampire Hunter D book, being half asleep, and then all of a sudden have a bat flying around the living room.
You sure you didn't hallucinate? I mean, you were reading Vampire Hunter.
No, well, I was the only one awake, and I didn't want to wake everybody up. So that was everybody. Are you sure you saw a bat?
Did you bite its head off like Ozzy Osbourne?
No, I didn't try catching it. Although supposedly they don't have rabies in Scotland, so it would have been safer. But I have no. I was fine with coexisting with the bat as long as I didn't have to have it land on me or poop on me.
You did find some garlic to put on, so.
Yeah, I brought. I put garlic by my pillow. I mean, I've been doing this podcast and watching horror movies long enough that why not be safe?
Yeah, right.
I didn't invite it in, so.
For those who've been wanting us to go back to vampires, there's your
brief moment.
Yeah.
Actually, anyway, I should take a moment after I introduce everybody to tell people exactly where they're going to be able to see us discuss a vampire movie live and in person very soon. But I will not talk about that right now. I'll do it after I introduce the next two amazing people. Also in Austin is Mr. Drew Edwards, editor-in-chief of HorrorMovies.net, writer for Rockabilly Online, and creator and writer of the long-running comic Halloween Man. Say hello, Drew.
Hello. There is no Drew, only Zool.
Only Zool. And finally, also in Denver, as always, color commentary from attorney Julia Guzman. Say hello.
Hello, hello.
Hello. All right, and this is the announcement that I was just mentioning. If you want to see us live, the Castle of Horror podcast is going to be doing a live presentation of our show, which we'll be recording, and it'll then go up as a podcast. But it'll be at the Anime Fest in Dallas, and the date of our actual show is it's Saturday, isn't it? Saturday night?
It is Saturday night, and I believe at 9 o'clock, but that is pending.
Right. And
I'm unlikely to make it, but these fine gentlemen will be there. Will Jamie be there?
Jamie will be there.
Awesome.
She might be in cosplay, which will be interesting, but she will be there.
That'd be fabulous. So that's the night of Saturday the 13th in Dallas, Texas, at the Anime Fest, and we'll be discussing the movie Vampire Hunter D. So
13th of August.
Yeah, of August, yes, August 13th, and it's going to be pretty awesome. So if you are around Dallas, and then go and get your tickets to the Anime Fest and join us and ask us questions.
We're going to be doing a lot of other panels that weekend, you should mention. We're doing a ton which are going to be listed on the Anime Fest website probably in the next day or so.
Yeah, it's true. We've got a lot of panels going. We're going to be talking about a lot of things like anime, the difficulty of writing manga for the American market, Japanese monsters. I think Tony might be showing an entire bunch of videos just cultivated out of Tony's own brain and Japanese pop culture. So it's going to be cool. I think it's going to be a really, really good show, and I'm excited about it. All right. So we will keep talking about that all month because we want to make sure that we have people come join us at the Anime Fest. All right, Ghostbusters 2016. The briefest introduction I can give you is the one from Wikipedia. So, Ghostbusters is a 2016 American supernatural comedy film directed by Paul Feig and is a reboot film or a remake or whatever you want to call it in the Ghostbusters.
Why can't we just call things remakes anymore? I've come to detest the term reboot for some inexplicable reason.
To me, if it's not the same plot, it's not a remake. I mean, it's not the same. It's just
we'll get into this, but this. The guts are different, but it does follow the mechanics of the first movie
I think it's almost
well enough.
Yeah, I agree. I think it is a distinction without a difference. I think it's just a popular term now. You know, there's other words that come across like reimagining. You'll hear people say, you know, where
reimagining might be the best thing to apply to this. A reboot to me is like one of those. It's like what they just did with Independence Day. It's like a belated sequel, which is what they tried to do with Ghostbusters for years, up until the point where Harold Ramis, R.I.P., is no longer with us.
Well, I mean, you know, didn't Ghostbusters 2 actually take about 5 years to come out?
Yeah, give or take. Yeah,
it was
1989.
This was never an easy franchise to get another chapter going in. Anyway, just to finish off, the film is written by Feig and Katie Dippold and stars Melissa McCarthy, Kristen Wiig, Kate McKinnon, and Leslie Jones as four women who start a ghost-catching business in New York City. Yes, and we will continue our discussion of what whether reboots and remakes and yada yada. But first, let's get our opening thoughts. And Tony, you haven't been back in a while, so let's go. Tony, Julia, Drew, and then Jason, and then Tony, I think you're going to kick off the first topic. So, Tony, opening thoughts. What are your thoughts, Ghostbusters 2016?
So, I thought, I didn't know quite what I was in for, because let me tell you, the trailers have all been terrible. Even when people, for me, even when people are like, it looks better now, like, this looks bad. But I usually didn't say anything because of how politically charged this movie is. Holy crap. Like, the stuff around the movie is almost bigger than the movie itself. Mm-hmm. For all kind of crappy reasons. Some good, but mostly crappy, and that kind of sucks. I went with my wife, Rain. We both actually had kind of similar opinions, and, you know, because I wanted to, she hadn't been keeping up with all the internet outrage and everything else, and so the first thing I asked her was, what'd you think? And she mirrored my thoughts, which was, it was good, it wasn't great, it wasn't bad, but we were both firmly in the middle. Like, it was fun, and there's lots of great jokes, but it didn't wow me. Like, I can't see, like, oh man, I'm gonna go back several times, or hey, I have to stop when I'm going through the channels if it's on TV. It just didn't do that. But that said, there's lots of great performances. It's really funny, and like seeing the trailer and seeing this, I was like, okay, because that trailer looked just
it's the most disliked trailer in the history of YouTube. I think that's important to bring up.
But that has nothing to do with the quality of the trailer.
Part of it is because of internet jerks. But like that trailer really, like, I was like, oh man, but I wanted to not be an internet jerk. I wanted to like this. And luckily, in full disclosure, Paul Feig is like, I like his work, and he was even cool enough to bring us donuts one time at Butnamathon. And so, you know, in the morning when everybody's tired, hey, check out my movie that I'm previewing, and here's donuts. That guy's pretty cool, and he's a great, like, Q&A, by the way. But, so, yeah, so I'm a little bit biased because, you know, donuts, that's golden. Yeah. But you know, it's just, we'll get into what I had problems with later, but that was I'm firmly in the middle. Like, I didn't think it was awful, but there were some missteps here and there for me that it just didn't have. And man, and final, sorry to be a little bit long-winded, I also found it really hard, and I tried, when something's so nostalgic, like I saw this with my grandfather back when it first came out, and he was really mad about the dick jokes and stuff. He was a very conservative Catholic. But he liked the other parts. But, like, how many times I've seen that movie, and just in general, it is really hard to be objective in a remake, reboot situation like this. And so I can't say that didn't cloud some of it. And I really, really do try to, like, be objective about things. So that's partially it. That being said, we're fully in. We need a new thing. The people without nostalgia have kind of a cool new movie with cool stars and cool heroes, new heroes, female heroes, and, you know, that's pretty awesome. So even if I wasn't super like, oh, man, yes, the movie I actually wanted, you know, I think possibly I'm not even the person who needs to champion the movie, or who it's targeted at, and that's fine too. So anyway,
it's a really good observation. Julia, okay, speaking for all womankind.
No pressure. I do not speak for all womankind. I speak for myself only.
All right.
But
opening thoughts, Ghostbusters.
Yes. You know, I agree with Tony that it feels like the politics around this movie are bigger than the movie, and so it is. I agree with pretty much everything Tony said. I hated the trailers. I hated them too, and I was like, oh, this is not going to be funny, and these are all such funny people. But I will say that they didn't disappoint me as funny women. I mean, I feel like I'm actually the worst about thinking that women aren't funny. I very rarely find women funny. I really don't. And so I love Ellen DeGeneres, and I love Kristen Wiig, and actually Melissa McCarthy has had to grow on me. I didn't like her at first. And then Kate McKinnon has her moments off and on. Leslie Jones I'm not a huge fan of. But there's some women. But anyway, in this film I felt like they really, I think it got a slow start. I didn't feel like it was right at first just kind of grabbing me, but it did pick up, and they did each have some great moments. Especially, I thought Kate McKinnon started just boring. I didn't like her at all, and then she just started to become more and more bizarre and hilarious. And there were some things that she did that just had me cackling. And then I thought Melissa McCarthy did a great job. Kristen Wiig is not at her best in this film. She's been much funnier, but she did a nice job for what she was, because she is kind of the straight man of the thing. And I disagree about. I mean, people are like. I think part of the thing is you have to be a Saturday Night Live fan to really get these people. Maybe I don't know. I am one, so I have a hard time. Well, I don't know. I just know that I've seen a lot of reviews of people saying that it's some kind of racism that Leslie Jones' character is loud and obnoxious. Leslie Jones is loud and obnoxious. That's what she is. That's her comedy style. You know, it's not. I don't think it's a racist thing.
No, I'd like to talk more about that actually as we go on, because I liked her character. Her character was my favorite of all four of them.
Her character is really cool, and not at all what you thought it was going to be in the end.
Right.
I want to talk about that because I think it's
no, she's very she's great. Yeah. So so I didn't dislike it, and in fact, there's a lot of stuff about it I liked a lot. I thought the battle scene at the end was actually pretty impressive. I don't know. So I don't get it. I don't get the hatred out there. I think there's a lot of sexism. People who say the movie is sexist, I think, are being sexist. I mean, that we will get into that.
Well, those people need to be boned up on what the term false equivalency me.
Yeah.
Like saying because something is all female is sexist because they're trying to level a playing field that is dominantly male. Sure. They don't understand how good it is to possess a penis in America today.
Yeah,
and
we'll definitely get more into that because that issue is super important. So I think we'll cover it for sure.
Yeah, if you want to know the test, just try and list the top 10 movies of 2016 and tell me how many of them have an all-female cast, and
how many have an all-male cast,
and see what you can figure out.
Right.
Certainly, how many actually have females, especially ones that are over 20, portrayed as heroic.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And then if you really want to be mean, then also eliminate the ones that are animated. All right, Drew. Opening thoughts. Ghostbusters 2016.
Well, I want to say that both Julia and Tony are getting on some things that because I've been working on my piece on this movie for horrormovies.net for the last 3 days. I've actually been working very hard on it, and they've hit on some things about, heroism and, what the potential of this film, plus how nostalgia factors into fandom and being objective. So, when I post that probably tomorrow, I'll probably post that on the page. So shameless plug there. I was geared up to hate this movie. The original Ghostbusters is literally my favorite movie. Like, if you were to say, give me a top 20 list, favorite movie, the others would probably fluctuate around a lot. Ghostbusters has been ironclad in the top spot probably my entire life. When we did, those who have been listening a long time, when we did Ghostbusters 2, I was openly skeptical about doing a third Ghostbusters movie because I thought, just leave well enough alone. We have these cartoons, we have this video game, we have these 2 movies, all of that's pretty good. Let's just leave it alone. I am eating crow. I dug the hell out of this movie. I'm not going to say it's perfect. I'm not going to say that I was objective because they certainly were playing my nostalgia card quite heavily. And in fact, there were certain points where they just peppered the old theme music into the score. I started to get choked up. I'm not going to lie. And yeah, I'm thinking about going back and seeing it in 3D. I almost never see anything in 3D. Most of the time, I feel like it's a waste of money. Some of the ghosts in this were really cool looking, and I think they would look great in 3D. Some of them were not so great. We'll get into that. But the ones that rocked really, really rocked. So
yeah, I saw it in 3D so I could catch all the gags, and it looked good. And I think they used post 3D, which was pretty impressive.
Well, I heard Feig was actually playing around with like the streams the way they would like on the Proton Pack.
That was really rad. That was really well.
I loved the gadgets. I'm a big fan of the Holtzman character played by Kate McKinnon. I thought she was hysterical and amazing at the same time. There was just a few times where they would just cut the facial expressions she was making and I would be rolling. So, I went into this movie thinking I was going to cross the streams on it and send it to live with Gozer in another dimension. I really dug this movie. I can't wait to watch it again. I'm not going to say I'm being the most objective, but I'm glad that when they finally got around to making a third Ghostbusters movie, it was one that I liked as much as I did. I'm not going to say it's perfect. I will get into the stuff that did not work for me, but I will say that after I did see the movie and I knew that I was going to have to think like a film critic, I gave myself 2 days just to be a dork about it. And then I was like, okay, now I'm going to, bone up and get ready to point out what I thought was flawed.
Right.
But I think so far I would say I am probably the one that liked this movie the most out of our quartet.
Excellent. What strikes me, I'll run through this really quickly. I echo basically everything that you guys said, so there's no sense in my just saying it in different words. The one thing that strikes me that this movie cannot recapture, and this is one of the things that I think is at the heart of people's dissatisfaction with knowing that a Ghostbusters 2016 was coming, is that in 1984, the notion of professionals hunting ghosts and having groovy backpacks with weapons that could go after them, all that sort of shtick of the professional ghost hunter, short of the low-tech version in Van Helsing that was seen in the 60s, that was new and fresh. And in 2016, we're now living in a world where there's been 11 seasons of Supernatural, and where
and Men in Black, which is essentially Alien Busters.
Also, anytime somebody mentions a ghost, your next thing is to hum some version of a Ray Parker tune.
Absolutely. There's an awareness of the Ghostbusters. So
and who are you going to call? Nobody ever gets. Nobody ever says who are you going to call without thinking Ghostbusters right after that.
Yes. Right.
And in fact, the Draft House showed Ghostbusters around the world,
that
before
was
the thing.
Hysterical. Jason and I saw that as well.
Philippines, France, everywhere you could possibly think there was some low-tech, usually, version of a proton pack.
Like a high school program.
Yeah. I loved that thing of the French teenagers who made a little fan film of Ghostbusters.
With the little car, the little toy car on the string.
I had no idea that French teenage girls could be just as nerdy as American teenage girls. But
or as nerdy as American middle-aged men who saw this movie back in the 80s.
Yeah. Right. Well, so anyway, my main point is it's impossible to recapture the moment that happened in 1984. So this movie has no choice but to come into a world that's already savvy about the kind of movie it is.
Well, it's self-aware. It's self-aware of its place in pop culture. Like I said, it's no accident. Like one of the things that I hate about remakes is that a lot of the times they jettison a really good theme song from the original. This one went full on the opposite way. Ray Parker Jr. was getting a lot of royalty checks out of this thing.
I'm so happy about that too, because I defy anybody to try to hum to me the Man of Steel theme by Hans Zimmer.
Well,
and what is Christian Bale's Batman theme?
Right. Whereas if I say, hey, give me Danny Elfman's 1989 Batman theme, you got it. There's no way, everybody knows da 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 da. I mean, it's they know that theme. They know the John Williams stuff, and for some reason, Hollywood has become so hip that it no longer wants catchiness, which makes no sense to me at all.
Yeah, but it's a great song. And actually, Ray Parker Jr. was on the Tonight Show the other day. He looks fantastic. He looks better than he did back then.
Right. Well, he had some dorky hair in 1984, to be sure.
He all had dorky hair in 1984.
Although, man, oh man, that new remake of the song.
Fall Out Boy this movie didn't run my childhood, but Fall Out Boy might have.
Oof.
We've got to talk about that phrase too, to the extent that we can.
Thankfully, there's 4 other covers on the soundtrack, and in fact, they had one from a Riot Grrrl band out of L.A. That should have been the thing they were pushing, considering the direction they went with this.
I agree wholeheartedly with that. When I heard it, I was like, why that thing? That horrible travesty. Why not this? This all fit This theme fits. This song fits. What were you thinking? I have no idea. This whole summer, the marketing machine behind movies has been just full of I don't know what. Go home, you're drunk. I don't know what you're doing.
Except for Marvel.
Well, I mean, remember when Puff Daddy redid Kashmir for Godzilla, and I was like, whoa, man. I totally am down with using Kashmir. I think it's awesome, but I don't understand this strange Puff Daddy version that you've decided to voice on the world.
Hey, Jason, before you go, I don't know if you're done with your thoughts, but before you go on to Tony's thing that he wants to talk about, I wanted to say I forgot to mention that Chris Hemsworth is hysterical in this movie.
Yeah, he's really funny.
He is funny, but what's interesting to me is that if this is how in DC, how there are all these different Earths, and there's an Earth where the Justice League is bad guys, or an Earth where the Justice League are all female, except for the ones who are female and are male. This is like an alternate Earth, and I kept trying to figure out if in the Venkman universe, if Peter Venkman, with all of his sort of casual nastiness, had a woman like the equivalent of Thor as his secretary, would he have been able to treat her in the way that Chris Hemsworth is treated? I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying it's interesting to think about.
That's also something I want to talk about too, like as we progress. But
so here's my.
But we can all agree that Thor is very, very funny.
Thor is funny, he's hilarious, very talented, totally. I want to throw it to Tony, but my final thought was the original movie had a kind of like I say, there was a casual hostility that Bill Murray carried around that I'm fine with. It's very funny. I love the original. If you go listen to our show, which we posted as last week's show, I loved Bill Murray. Everybody did. But it's back off, man. I'm a scientist. He's scamming girls. He's insulting everybody else. There's a casual sort of nastiness to Bill Murray's character, and there was nobody like that here. This movie is made up of 4 people who are all pretty easy to get along with, which is kind of funny.
So you just finished saying, would they be able to get away with treating a female receptionist the way that Chris Hemsworth did? And then you just said that Bill Murray is like scamming women.
He's pretty rude to Janine.
That's what I'm saying. He's not coming on to her sexually, but he's coming on to other women. He's coming on to Sigourney Weaver. I mean, the fact is, he's just that is.
And the answer. So I guess the answer is you're right. They didn't have a secretary, but you're right. I can go to the other characters. The answer is everybody found Bill Murray's character to be highly forgivable because he was funny. That's
exactly.
So anyway,
that's the thing about.
We shouldn't. Yeah. Well, we shouldn't. Doesn't give it an excuse, but like, there's certain things where you're like, oh man, I watch this now. That's not cool. But at the time, you're like, oh, that's just the way the 80s are. That doesn't make it right, but it does make it like, oh yeah, in context. Hopefully we progress, but of course, internet nerds.
It's also like the Ghostbusters are like they're the heroes of the movie, but they are extremely flawed and human. Like they aren't superheroes. They aren't like the puffed up macho action heroes in Arnold Schwarzenegger movies. These are regular guys.
Most heroes are flawed, but I do catch your point.
No, but that's what I'm saying, Jason, is that they're not supposed to be morally superior. It's like there's only a handful of characters I could think of in all of the movies and the TV shows that I've ever watched that are just kind of morally perfect. The first one that comes to mind is, of course, Captain Picard. Captain Picard's not going to hit on be mischievous toward women. He's got Riker for that. So he's like, we don't, but that's it. I mean, you get to be kind of skeevy because people are. That's what humans are. Exactly.
Well, also, I mean, he was funny. Now, I do think that we have that you could have a character just as skeevy as Peter Venkman in a movie today, and usually
they do. He's called Captain Kirk. He's in a movie next weekend.
Absolutely. No, you're totally right. Yeah, absolutely. And Deadpool, you name it. And so I don't think it's just a thing of the 80s. I think there's an alchemy out there where a character can act a certain way, be obnoxious, and we go ahead and forgive him because we're interested in watching that character, and other characters that we're not interested in.
Plus we like seeing flawed people rise to the occasion. On that note, Tony.
Well, and just as kind of a segue, as kind of a segue.
It was a joke. I love you, Tony, and your excellent hair. You rock, God, you.
Oh, and the awesome rock poster that Harry Knowles made of him.
That's why you're calling him a rock guy.
Yeah.
Crazy. We live in a weird world, and that segues also. But like with Bill Murray, like if you watch Stripes, you watch anything he was in before Ghostbusters, like he's kind of really just being Bill Murray. In fact, the more I see Bill Murray over the years, and he did like a Christmas special that I found for myself to be unwatchable. I don't know if I bought in. I loved him in Zombieland, but I don't know if I bought into the like Bill Murray just does stuff. Hey, how cool is that? Over the years, I kind of believe that he's more of the guy in Scrooged than perhaps we want to believe that he is.
Right.
But so my big thing is I wanted to have a disclaimer for this episode because there's just so much crap that I think overshadows the movie. So I was actually really worried about critiquing this movie because just over the past couple of days, I've seen things like I was gearing up. I was like looking like, oh man, on Monday night I'm going to go with Rain and we're going to watch this movie. And I was kind of watching, and there was a guy on Twitter who was like, well, if they're not like, all the internet rage happened beforehand, and that was stupid. Then there was a guy on Twitter who was like, well, if they're not going to be blue-collar workers, why aren't they hot? They have to be hot. Like, that's stupid, too. Then I had another friend, lesbian friend, who a guy was like, he was like, meh, I don't know about that movie. And he gets called out for being a straight white guy. And I'm like, but I'm a straight white guy. I didn't love the movie. I liked it a lot. I didn't love it. But it has become this thing where it's uncritiquable. It seems like people are like, we love, and this is something I really dislike in our culture now, is it's just so polarizing. This idea of you have to be for something or against something. There's no middle ground. Let's just throw middle ground out. So I was really like reticent in some ways. Like, oh man, do I really want to do this one as far as my first one back? Like, what if I don't like it as much? What if I really hate it? Am I going to be labeled a misogynist because I don't like this movie? Luckily, because of the trailers, like I saw it and it wasn't that. But so many times I'm like, what is being a straight white male like? It was one of these things of like, well, let us have our thing. I'm like, well, I'm a moviegoer. Like, I'd like to have my thing. I'd like to have a great Ghostbusters movie. In my opinion, I got a good Ghostbusters movie, and that's cool too. And I also realized that, man, there's like 4 awesome women who take care of business and fight ghosts, and I have my Ghostbusters that I liked, but that's not necessarily the Ghostbusters that we need now. And it didn't just disappear, so people who like this one can go back and watch the old one. That's completely cool. But this idea that you can't, if you don't like this movie, somehow you're terrible, like internet nerds. And then my favorite character, Patty, like the actress who plays Patty today, is getting bombarded by racist jackasses. Yeah. Like, come on, people, for real, like, and it doesn't help anything because now, like I said, like there's a whole thing built up about this that it makes it almost unassailable, and you can't critique it in any normal way because you're one way or the other, and that just that's frustrating. I'm hoping that we can get past that.
The thing that I was discussing this with my neighbor TJ, who is also a Ghostbusters fanatic. He's also in a local punk band called Oscar Diner. Plug there, TJ. The thing that I said to him about it, because he's firmly in the I'm not going to go see this movie and everything, but he's very quick to point out, he doesn't have an issue with women or everything. He just doesn't need a remake of Ghostbusters. Sure. And I said, the thing that's unfortunate about that, with the way that with as polarizing and as political as this movie has become, is that if you scream loudly enough about this movie, it doesn't necessarily make you a misogynist that you didn't like this movie. But if you scream loudly enough about it, if you get angry enough about it, a lot of misogynists on the internet probably are going to think that you agree with their stupid rationale. And that is really unfortunate. And then the thing about, like, the Leslie Jones stuff, like, the thing I kept seeing all up and down, I had to unfollow and block a lot of people today because of that stuff. Because there's a lot of people like, oh, well, she's a celebrity, so she should be, thick-skinned and has to, she should be able to deal with that. Being famous does not mean you have to tolerate more bullshit than an average person. Like, some of the stuff that was being, and you can go look this stuff up, some of the stuff, that was being
I
said
don't
to
care
her
how
was
famous you
messed
are.
up.
Being told you look like King Kong is going to make you feel sad.
Yeah.
Also,
and the thing that made me even mad, because I'm busy like all the time lately, so I just kind of caught part of it. I didn't read the things, but I read enough to know that it was really bad. So my thing is, her character in general, it pisses me off that people have this reaction, and there's probably the same people like, women can't be Ghostbusters, which is stupid. But
I love it, by the way. I love that they actually reference that in the movie.
That was awesome. I think supposedly they reshot that, and that's great. But her character, from the trailer and from other things, could have been a Big Mama's House type of character going, oh, no, you didn't, like, stereotype, like, all of the stuff that we see, and it's actually come around to where that stereotype has made it into, like, a stereotype as a comedy in, like, things like 30 Rock and stuff like that, where they make fun of that being the stereotype. And But she was great. She was my favorite of the Ghostbusters, and, like, it could have been one way, and I thought the trailer, I was like, oh, man, like, really? I saw it. Patty is awesome. She's great. Like, she's well-rounded. She's happy at her job. She just wants to join. Like, hey, I've seen these things. I want to join them. Like, all of her stuff, Ray and I both agreed, again, that she was our favorite of the
New York. She's the one who knows
some of the stuff with her.
She used her knowledge to, like, help them. Hey, you want to know New York? I'm the one who knows this. That was fantastic. She's great. The fact that people are freaking out this way and being just complete jackasses, I was floored. Like, this morning I got up, like I said, and then later on in the day I found this out. I'm like, what's wrong with people? Like, why would you even do this?
I can't explain.
She's one of the best characters. Why be a
I
jackass?
have to say, like, some of the stuff with her that did not work in the trailers worked very well in the movie simply because they were extended longer and there was context around it, which is something that I found to be true with, because I really loved the hell out of Spy, but I thought that had terrible, which is another Paul Feig movie, and I thought that had terrible trailers too. But it's like it has the same thing.
Yeah, I don't think most of the time as a movie person, you don't get to pick who does your trailers and stuff. But holy crap, man, if he can do anything, if he gets like some kind of clout somewhere,
any juice,
just start, man, figure out how to cut your own trailers, because again,
I think the trailer
same
suffers from them trying not to spoil the stuff, though. Possibly. Because there were several things where I was like, well, this would have been really funny in the trailer, but it would have given away, that this person, whatever. I mean, like that this cameo is there. That I don't know, just different things that.
Well, also I think some of the special effects were unfinished because, like, the ghost at the very beginning, their sort of homage to the library ghost. She looked terrible in the trailers. I thought she was beautiful in the movie.
Although this something else I had on my notes, I actually wrote down a bunch of notes immediately afterwards so I wouldn't forget something since I can't rewind it. I did think this ghosts look great, and I still miss some of the practical effects. Like, I just like those, like the practical ghosts. They were very polished. I did think, for me, and your mileage may vary, none of them other than Slimer, who's a callback, were as iconic and interesting as the ghosts that I saw in the 84 one. I think they're neat, but, like, I wanted to know more about library ghosts. I wanted to know more about taxi ghosts. Like, when they were showing them, they show the montage of ghosts just going wild. Like, I was interested in that. And I have to say, I didn't give a crap about, like...
I liked the one that looks like Jack Skellington.
The electric chair ghost is real. The electric chair ghost is real. I mean, you could argue that that's a callback to Ghostbusters too, but that electric chair ghost is really cool looking. And I don't normally like CG. I don't normally like CG characters, Tony. You know this.
Yes. I felt, in fact, that was the one. That's my biggest gripe. Like, I wrote, I just kind of wrote stream of consciousness after I got out of the theater. And to me, in some ways, and, again, my critique is my critique, but it felt thinner. The movie itself, to me, felt a little thinner than the 84 one. And I can, you call me out, but like the what I liked, and I don't think this, I think this, and this is a conscious choice, so bear with me. But like the fact that there were people, you know, there was the Rick Moranis character, there was a Sigourney Weaver character, there were people outside of their group. That was part of the thrust of it, you know.
That's a really good
However,
I can agree with that.
And that, I liked the kind of outsiderness of it. However, one of the things that makes this reboot, is it is about the four Ghostbusters and how they come together. A very conscious friendship. Totally different.
I will
totally
say
on the friendship, whereas that's not the case in the 84 one. They're two way different things. I think it works for this one. But I like the 84 kind of getting out of that insular thing. That's not this movie, and that's completely cool because, hey, you've got four, you know, female Ghostbusters, and it's about their friendship, and that's that's a conscious decision.
There's no heterosexual bromance. In the 1980s.
I will just say this. You know, you were talking about Patty. You know, like I think the smartest thing that they did with these four characters is they did not try to just make them gender swapped versions of the original. Like I think everybody was assuming that Holtzman was going to be,
I want to go into all the characters next. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, that Holtzman was going to be Egon, and that Patty was going to be Winston, and you know there was going to be stand-in for Ray and Peter, and you know that we were going to have a Mel Janine and Chris Hemsworth, and they let them be their own thing, and I think that I was very charmed by this group of characters, but I will agree, like the fact that you had like Sigourney Weaver's character and Rick Moranis' character, you know, it did give you kind of, first of all, it played up more to the horror angle because you had regular people who didn't have laser guns to shoot the ghosts with that could be in mortal danger, I guess.
Yeah.
But again, this movie is this movie and that movie is that movie, and you know that's okay.
And I thought about it that way, and then I thought again, like, hey, you know, this is the way they told this story, and that really works. You know, different, it's kind of for a different audience. It's kind of a different, you know, the fact it's a, you know, reboot, whatever you want to call it, really works. Since again, I'm going through these nostalgia goggles, that I missed. But you know, that's neither here nor there. What's funny is Holtzman is like, she's got the haircut of
and the hair
from the
animated,
and that was pretty cool, man. Because I like that real Ghostbusters cartoon had some fantastic writing for some of the episodes.
Well, they just put it all out on DVD very affordably.
That's great. There were some genuinely scary episodes.
Before you go too far into those, in fact, let's take the characters from the top, because I want to start with ostensibly the lead, which is Kristen Wiig as what would you call, is counterpart the best word, or the, anyway, standing
she's the straight person she's the foil for.
But I mean, she's the counterpart for the Bill Murray character.
But she's nothing like Bill Murray.
No, I agree. Absolutely. But I mean, if you say there's four, and this one's the one who's ostensibly the lead, just as Bill Murray was, or at least the leader, then she plays our main hero, Abby, it's Erin Gilbert, and she's the one who ostensibly has the best career and the one who kind of has to be gathered to lead this group. But so I'll say this, and I'd love for you guys to comment. The funny thing is, I think she's the least interesting thing in the movie. I mean, Kristen Wiig.
What's the thing? She's the straight man. She's not supposed to be because she is, like you say, she's the serious scientist who has this sort of dark history of chasing ghosts, but not really.
Her ghost story that she told, and I kept expecting them to very cheaply go to a flashback, but like the story that she tells is actually very creepy. It's very creepy.
Oh yeah, that was great. Yeah. Whereas Peter Venkman, the thing with Peter, and I'd love to sort of think of these characters in terms of the ones that they're ostensibly replacing. Peter Venkman is somebody else said this, and I'm just going to steal this observation. Bill Murray plays Peter as though he cannot believe.
But is she Peter or is Melissa McCarthy Peter?
Oh, he's Peter. No, I mean she's Peter.
You don't think she's Harold Ramis? Because Harold Ramis is more of the.
No. Egon is.
I don't really think of these as any like I mean I don't really think of them as any like perfect sync up. Like you can say she's Peter. You can say she's Peter Venkman because she's the leader, but like anyway, I'm cutting.
I don't even know if she's a leader though. I kind of feel like Melissa McCarthy is the leader.
Okay, it's worth arguing, but I kind of feel like the movie wants you to think, maybe I'm wrong, that Erin is ostensibly the leader, and I think maybe I'm just primed.
I disagree. I think she's just the serious one. I think that Melissa McCarthy's the leader. I mean, she's the one who wants to do it. She's the one who says, nobody invited you, but I guess you can come because you can introduce us to the guy. But I always feel like Melissa McCarthy.
Who deals with the mayor? This is the question. The
only reason that Kristen Wiig's the one dealing with the mayor is because Melissa McCarthy gets possessed.
True. Typical five-man band, according to TV tropes, is that the five-man band is the leader, the lancer, leader, lancer, smart guy, big guy, chick. Okay. And so that means leader and lancer can almost trade places, but what that means is whatever the leader is, the lancer, which is the second in command, is always exactly the opposite.
Yeah, and that's the two of them. They're both leaders. They're co-leaders.
Yeah. I mean, basically, it's Picard and Riker, for instance, where Picard's the serious one, so Riker's the fuck up. Absolutely.
With the original Ghostbusters, I mean, Peter's the thing that you were about to bring up is that Peter's the de facto leader, but he doesn't really seem like he actually believes that strongly in the paranormal. He just sees it as a way to make money.
Melissa McCarthy's even the boss. She's the one hiring. She's the one making the decisions. And in fact, Kristen Wiig, when Chris Hemsworth comes along, Kristen Wiig's lost. She's like, you're so pretty.
That's a good point. Well, I bow to your reasoning. I see your point that, maybe I'm just simply. It's possible that because Kristen Wiig is a more traditional-looking leading lady, or God knows what, we're primed to.
No, I think it is because she's serious. She's serious, and Kristen Wiig's serious, and she's the academic. She's the.
Yeah, but they're both. They're all scientists here.
But I mean, she's the real went off and did the whole. Yeah. She's the serious scientist.
She's about to become a tenured professor.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and so, but I see your point. So they can trade back and forth. Anyway. So enough about Erin. I don't think there's anything really else to say. She has a scary story, but like we said, she's so straight.
Backing you up. I will back you up a little bit. She is sort of the spine that drives her backstory. Is the spine that drives the movie. She's like, we're all ghost girls now. She talks about being teased and no one believing them. When they have the thing of them going up against the establishment, they have called back to her backstory. So you could argue from that even if she's not the leader, she's definitely the person the audience is she's supposed to be the gateway into this weird world of the new Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
She's like the cornerstone. But I love that she's the one who gets all goofy and gaga over Chris Hemsworth.
Yeah, that is very clever.
And we don't actually usually get to see women do that in movies.
No, you're right. You're right. And so Melissa McCarthy, I think, whereas I said it, Bill Murray, way more watchable, I thought. With Melissa McCarthy, and I insist that she is supposed to be a replacement for Ray, I think she's really she's a unique character. She's real. You totally get into her. I think to some extent sometimes she's ad-libbing her lines. And
I think they all do. I think they probably had a lot of wide berth to be able to just say whatever.
Because there are some things that she'll do that are very Melissa McCarthy-esque, and that because there are deliveries and there's shtick that Melissa McCarthy does that is always funny when she does it, and like repeating things several times in different ways. And there's just Melissa McCarthy comedy that she's bringing here, and I really enjoyed it. But I don't remember a thing about Ray. I really don't remember. All I remember about Ray
was kind of the man child of the group.
Yeah, you're right. He was very excited. He, yeah, that's true. That's totally true. And he's the one who understood about the significance of the building that the Demon Zool was focused on.
Yeah, I just don't think the more we talk about it, the more I think they're not really parallel at all with the original. These characters, they're kind of just new characters which
is just as well.
Because what you just said is the role that Leslie Jones has in this movie. I mean, as far as the knowing the stuff.
Yeah, it's like all the pieces have been, which is just fine, but all the pieces have been thrown up into the air and then resorted.
Reassigned.
The only thing that Leslie Jones kind of has in common with the Winston character is that she's the more blue collar member that they bring in later in the movie. But she gets a lot. Honestly, if I may be slightly critical of Ghostbusters 84, she actually gets a lot more to do than Winston ever did.
Oh, yeah,
that's
she does.
True. Definitely.
She's a fucking genius. Because this Leslie Jones, somebody goes, oh, you mean such and such hotel? And she goes, well, that's interesting because in my big old brain I remember that such and such thing happened at that hotel.
All this stuff in her. Yeah, she knows all these things.
She's like Kolchak the Night Stalker. She just knows all this stuff about everything. I mean, she's a genius.
She's
just like
brave. She's willing to go after.
And none of that was in the ads.
Right.
I don't know. Maybe that's not I don't know what to do with that.
No, the trailer's terrible, and they don't even. I mean, they make her feel so stupid and useless. Yeah, I mean, it's. I don't know. I really liked her character a lot more than I would have expected to from what I saw in the ads.
I also thought she was funny. There's a point where Kate McKinnon goes. She goes, there was this flashing thing, and Kate McKinnon says, well, did you see what it was? And she goes, baby doll, if I had seen what it was, I wouldn't call it a flashing
If I knew what it was, I wouldn't call it a
And that was
thing.
She's cute. I mean, Leslie Jones is allowed to be much more sort of funny and attractive and cool here than she ever gets to be on SNL, where they have her basically just playing this sort of alien aggressor all the time.
Well, you say they have her. I mean, they write their own stuff, so she's the one who chooses to be that. I mean, they may not give her, they may not approve the sketches that she creates where she's not those things, but she creates a lot of what she does on SNL.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm really enjoying Leslie Jones's performance here, whereas Winston, completely forgettable.
Right.
Well, Winston gets some of the best lines in the first movie, and he gets the last line in the movie. But they did a more, like, honestly, he's one of the characters that actually benefited from Ghostbusters 2, and honestly, like the supplementary media, like the comics and the cartoons, because they fleshed out that character a lot. And I love Ernie Hudson. Like, I think he's great in just about everything. Yeah, I think he's just about great in everything he shows up, but, like...
He's the only good thing in Congo.
Yeah. That is true.
Oh, man.
I love it that every single one of these guys, except for Rick Moranis and, of course, Harold Ramis, who's passed away, shows up someplace in this movie. That's a lot of fun. The cameos were really enjoyable, I thought.
Well, we need to talk about
before we do the
cameos.
We still got to talk about Kate McKinnon.
Yeah, no, I just mentioned it because you mentioned Ernie Hudson.
Oh, yeah, no, indeed. Yes. So Kate McKinnon plays Holtzman, and I have to say, if I were, this is something we didn't ask Sophia, because we went with our 14-year-old daughter, and one thing I didn't ask is, if you were, I think, a younger girl maybe than 14, I have a feeling you might totally fixate on Holtzman, because Holtzman is in a way the breakout character of the movie.
Well, I think Chris Hemsworth is, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but she's so Egon. I think the place they start, they're inspired in a sense by Egon. Tony pointed out that she even kind of has Egon's hair. And Egon was the really kind of obtuse, I don't even know how best...
Well, Harold Ramis described Egon as a new wave version of Spock.
Yeah, okay. Yes. He reacts to emotion strangely. He answers sometimes in a completely perpendicular way from how you were asking something. So there's a borderline Asperger's thing going on with him, and he knows all the stuff, and he creates a lot of the technology. And they start there with this girl, except for that this girl is very odd. I mean, just incredibly odd. Does anybody want to?
Well, and again, I think that is as much just Kate McKinnon, because we're talking about how all these actors were given the gift of being able to bring their own personality to the role. And I haven't read specifically how they were directed, but it seems to me, based on what I know from having seen them in other stuff, that they were. Because Kate McKinnon's thing is, if you watch her in some of the SNL sketches where she's with other people, they're all trying so hard not to laugh and often failing miserably at it, because she just does the most bizarre things with what the material is. She makes the faces. I think Drew was the one saying that you just burst out laughing after she'd make some face. She makes the faces. She does suddenly breaking out into singing like she's Glenda or whatever. And I can't imagine that was written into the script.
I am not a 14-year-old girl, but I loved that character. I think that I will be surprised if she does not become a kind of an iconic character. I will be deeply shocked if she doesn't become one of the most costumed characters at conventions this season. And frankly, actually, I was discussing that on Facebook the other day about between that and we have Suicide Squad coming out in a few weeks. I'd much rather my teenage daughter, my hypothetical teenage daughter, I should say, I would much rather, if I had a daughter, I'd much rather them fixate on this character than Harley Quinn. And I like Harley Quinn, but she's not a good role model. This character is a badass.
Yeah, that's, and what's weird to me, though, I will have to say, that character, I was all over the map as far as my take on her. Mm-hmm. Because sometimes I find her really funny, and I like her on SNL. I like the actress as well as the character, but sometimes I was she felt extremely shrill to me. I was just oh man, I don't like this character at all. And then other times I was laughing my ass off. It was really weird. And another thing I wrote down, because I was some scenes I just was oh man, I'm really sick of this person. And
I felt the same way. I got really I can't think of how to say this. It was she grew on me throughout the movie, because at first I was kind of I almost felt like she was trying too hard, given that she didn't have lines. She was trying to be there anyway, present, but then suddenly she just had stuff to do, and it was hilarious. And all the stuff with all the weapons. I had just watched Iron Man, the one with I guess it would be.
Which one?
Which one's the one that
Whiplash?
has? Yeah, well, I was trying to think if it's the one with Whiplash. It's the one where.
That's Iron Man 2.
Giving them no, I'm trying to think if it's the one with Whiplash. The point is, I was thinking about the scene where what's his name's giving them the weapons and pointing down all the guns and saying, this one and this one, and then Rhodey's I'll take all of them. It's that
sounds like Justin Hammer in X-Men.
Justin Hammer, yes.
In number 2.
Right. Anyway, so when she's talking about all her weapons, I was thinking about Justin Hammer. But yeah, that once she gets to start making stuff and sharing it and showing how it's demonstrating how it's used, and then her battle scene in the big giant battle scene at the end, where she's like Whiplash basically. She's got this awesome. She's got all these weapons, all these great weapons, and she's just the choreography is beautiful. I liked it a lot.
I have to say, and I hope I know me talking about my comic book upsets some people out in internet land, but
those people can stand.
If they ever get around to making,
I wouldn't worry about it.
Yeah. If they ever, I'm not. If they ever get around to doing a Halloween Man movie, that battle scene with her actually gave me hope that they could do Lucy Wright in a movie with as far as kick-ass female scientist with lots of ray guns.
Yeah. Yeah.
So on that on that tip, hopefully it's not too abrupt of a segue. I was thinking today, the one thing that I thought was weird, and maybe the idiots on the internet are fixating on, is I will have to say I couldn't think of one man in the movie that was good or competent. And maybe that's the point, and that's fine. But, you know...
Well, the mayor is not a bad... But there's not very many men in the movie.
He actually had the best... I have to say, the mayor had the best line in the movie to me, which was, never compare me to the Jaws mayor.
Never compare me to the Jaws mayor.
No, but
so
in general, all of the men in the movie kind of suck in various ways. And that's what they... You know... That is what it is, but
here's the thing
thinking about it was
women never get good characters, and hardly ever get good characters in movies who are the men or the most of the characters.
But it's an interesting point.
It would be nice if there was some again, it's not that movie, and again, it's so politically charged that when I say that, it's kind of a minefield. But when I was thinking about it again, I wonder if that's part of what people see, this is a thing. Most of those people are wrong.
The problem with your logic there, Tony, is most of those guys moaning about that probably haven't actually seen the movie. You're making at least an informed opinion.
And I was, and it was just something I was thinking about, just ruminating on. Because, again, I love Hemsworth's stupidity. You know, the thing where he's this is loud, and he puts his fingers to his eyes.
Okay, that actually bothered me because I thought it was a gag too far. In other words, I felt like
I don't know.
beyond fiction.
Helmsworth really worked for me because I felt like he was a flip on, if this movie had been made in 1961 or something, that probably would have been Jane Mansfield playing a buxom, dumb, blonde secretary. He's the male equivalent of that.
Right.
That's okay.
He's Rose from Golden Girls.
Yeah, but even Rose wouldn't have covered her eyes when something is too loud.
But she did stuff like that all the time. She did ridiculous things all the time.
The no glasses bit, that Rose would have done. I'm just saying that it didn't work for me as a gag. I felt like it was out of tune.
He is very broadly played, and I did, knowing that your distaste for broad comedy, wonder how you would react to that, because
I love absurdity, and so he worked really well for me.
It worked really well for me, and I actually believe, Jason, maybe it'll make you feel better if you think of it as him being silly, as opposed to him actually believing that he's plugging his ears. He's just being silly. He does weird stuff.
I can buy that.
Like putting the phone in the fish tank.
Well, what was the thing about the hot dog over that? When he was giving them potential logos because he's autographic designer, he had a hot dog over a house. He's like, it's because it's being held by a ghost.
And that was funny. It does play into the. I can't fault them for a lot of things because it does play into, again, the reality of the ridiculousness, the ridiculous backlash of this movie. So of course he has a ghost with boobs. It's very meta at that point too, because I'm sure is this Ghostbusters logo like this? Somebody received that. I guarantee you. Where somebody had to get that email and go, okay, thanks, jackass. And all these things, you're like, yeah, this probably, there's a seed of truth in all of this. And
I wanted to point out, though, Tony, answering your point about positive male characters in this, it's an interesting point. Georgia McBride, is a publisher of books, and she posted recently about a different movie. She said the difficulty for men, a lot of men, watching movies where the main characters or the best characters are women, is that men don't have a long cultural history and experience of identifying strongly with female characters, whereas women grow up watching a lot of media where the men are main characters.
Right.
And so they're already in the habit of, if needed, identifying with the male main character.
And again, I don't want it to be something where I'm like, what? Well, I can't believe there's no good men. It's more of,
it's by
hey, that's an interesting, like, to me it was, like, when I thought about it, like I said, I'm merely saying it as an observation. That's the thing that happened, so.
If I may, I want to paraphrase something that Ivan Reitman, who is, the director of the original Ghostbusters films and a producer on this. This is something he said to address all this controversy, which is Ghostbusters, and I'm probably not exactly getting this because I'm paraphrasing, but Ghostbusters has always been about people on the outside, like the underdog, taking on the establishment as well as supernatural forces. So in 2016, the most logical thing you can do with that is have women doing that, because women are, of course, always on the outside of the establishment in many respects. And I think that is a very good way of looking at it. It's a very smart way to look at it. Hey, leave it to right-wing, leaning, libertarian Ivan Reitman to say the most progressive thing about it.
Yeah, it's a really good point.
Again, I mean, you're totally right as well. Like, there's always the potential when you go, like, why aren't there X? You're like, dude, this isn't for you. Like, whatever.
But you're not wrong.
Like, this isn't for you. Like,
but
that you have, like, we have enough of that. How about
Golden Girls?
And that's totally understandable.
Okay, so as I'm watching it, though, I mean, this thing is, since I'm representing all of womenkind, apparently.
Yes.
I
let you talk.
I can't. Yeah, it's very. No, I mean, I just watch it and go, what would anybody say any of this if it were men and then one woman or whatever? And they wouldn't, because that happens all the time in every movie.
Right.
So it's if you think about all the films that you've seen or that we've talked about in this podcast, if we looked at the percentage of female characters that we've had as the main, like either the heroines or the heroes of the movie, or even just having any kind of, like, you were saying that there's no good. I mean, somebody was saying there's no good strong men in this. I mean, how many films have we seen where if there are any women, they're either the stupid victim that's the damsel in distress, or they're the bitch. I mean, that's pretty much all. Or they're the bombshell, which is what
my goodness,
are.
You actually just described the movie Zombies of Moratau.
It's all movies.
Yeah.
All
no,
movies
you're totally right, and I think, and that's definitely part of it, and that's it's hard because that's that's not what I mean.
No, you're not wrong, Tony.
And what's interesting though, I think we covered a lot of that when we were actually talking about Phantasm. Is there's a lot of, like, eye rolling, like, oh, there's no strong woman. And then when there is a strong woman, you kind of want her back. Like, why isn't she more in Phantasm? And it's so. I guess it's just weird with this movie in particular. Like I said before, there's so much internet just crazy business that it's harder and harder to make it. I just want to watch this movie.
It's funny that Sigourney Weaver is in this film and a cameo and was in the original film, given that Ripley is another one of those characters who has been, like, so many people are like, oh, a strong woman character, like one of the few that we can name in any kind of horror movie or science fiction movie.
Sure.
And yet there's so many people who hate that character. I mean, not nearly as many as this, but, for that reason, because they're like, well, there's not supposed to be women heroes.
All right, can I ask a question? When Kate McKinnon's character smiles at watching Aaron flirt with Thor, is Kate McKinnon, what is this? Because I took it as she finds it fascinating how Aaron is putting herself out by flirting so much.
I think she's just, the character just thinks that he's cute. Actually, she's a really goofy character anyway. She smiles about a lot of stuff. But I think she thinks she's adorable, and I don't think she's a lesbian character.
Well, actually, Paul Feig has actually come out and said that she is intended to be a lesbian, but the actress is a lesbian.
Yeah, I get that impression, and I mean, that's cool. I thought she just thought it was funny that she's watching this because she's awkward. It's really funny to watch this awkward heterosexual relationship have, like, sort of meander around and probably won't happen. Like,
although
you
bring up an interesting point, Julia, unlike the original Ghostbusters films, which had like a sub-layer of romantic comedy boiling at them, there was a relationship there. This movie has no romance in it, which is very rare.
I think that, and that's actually another, thing that makes it cool and different.
Refreshing.
Is there's no distraction of like, oh hey, we have to stop the plot to have a romance. It's like we have to continue to fight ghosts. Although, man, I mean,
the fact is, like I was saying before, is that Bill Murray, the way he treats Sigourney Weaver is very, he's totally treating her like a piece of meat, which is kind of ironic given that she ends up being, taken over, and so she kind of just is a piece of meat. And so, and that's what she's doing with Chris Hemsworth. Everybody's like, well, that's just sexist. That's just how these films always are when you have an attractive. I mean, like, think about all the James Bond movies. Has there ever been a woman that wasn't objectified in a James Bond movie?
Although Sigourney Weaver, at least, because Peter Venkman is such an obvious buffoon so many times, Sigourney Weaver really, she comments on what a jerk Peter is. She's
likes smart.
She likes him despite him being a jerk, which is hilarious.
Yeah.
Well, and I think in Ghostbusters 2, they actually do a lot. They do a lot to make their relationship seem a little bit more even. That's probably like one of the few things they greatly improved on in Ghostbusters 2, actually.
Although, if you remember, how there was a problem, because we did an episode on Ghostbusters 2. And the problem to me was, I like Ghostbusters 2, but
I like it as well. But
why is this baby not Peter's? There was all kinds of stuff there where it was just it was stopping me occasionally, where I was like, I don't understand some of these story choices. And I have to say, this movie does a better job of making choices than Ghostbusters 2.
Well, with the exception of the Ozzy Osbourne cameo, I could have done without that.
Oh, man.
That wouldn't fit in very well. And in fact,
that brought the movie to a halt to me. And, it was instantly dated even before like, they could have cut that so easy. It was so unnecessary.
Whatever band that was on stage, too, was painful to me.
I wasn't crazy about that cameo. Actually, to be honest with you, I thought Dan Aykroyd's cameo just got in the way.
Well, I didn't even recognize him. I was like...
Dan Aykroyd didn't bother me. I think Sigourney Weaver had the best cameo on a whole. Yeah. I would have preferred Bill Murray's cameo just to be the appearance on TV. I think when they actually, unfortunately, had him... He was in the movie a lot more than I thought. He's actually kind of a full-on character.
Yes.
He's essentially playing Walter Peck, actually.
Apparently he does that character does the foreword for the book, the tie-in book, that's the book that they wrote, that the characters, his character is a foreword saying that, so apparently he doesn't die when he falls out the window, because his foreword apparently says that he now believes, in them, and that that all this stuff. Yeah, he's not dead.
I thought he became a ghost. I was just assuming he became a ghost.
I took that as like a reference to the only way, like for years, Bill Murray was saying the only way he would appear in another Ghostbusters is if they killed him, and that's what I took that as a reference. I didn't like that scene, honestly, for multiple reasons. For one, I felt like having to look at Bill Murray in a Ghostbusters movie and him not be Venkman for that long became distracting.
I agree that the TV would have been enough. The TV appearance.
Also, I feel like that the way they behaved in that scene was very oafish, and it doesn't seem like they're occasionally not careful, but they don't seem careless completely. In that scene, they seem pretty careless, and I didn't feel like
it's like Kristen Wiig is suddenly a narcissist that all she cares about is being right and not about safety and whatever.
This is one of the dangers of comics is that to go for jokes, sometimes the scenes will push the characters in directions.
Well, and Ghostbusters is not a straight comedy. I mean, it it's just as much sci-fi and it's just as much horror. And the ghosts, even though they're occasionally whimsical, are always, even the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, who is bizarre, is still treated as threatening.
Yeah.
And I didn't care for that scene. It didn't work for me at all, and which made me sad because I was glad to see Bill Murray, but I don't know. I liked Ernie Hudson's cameo the best, and I liked I liked Sigourney Weaver's and Annie Potts. First of all, both Ernie Hudson and Annie Potts look terrific.
Sure.
I don't know what vitamins they're taking, but I want to take them.
Yeah, no.
Annie
absolutely.
Potts has a lot of work, but I'm not going to get into that. But I thought that, but yeah, I really enjoyed Ernie Hudson's cameo the most because it was such a surprise. I don't know why I was surprised. I should have seen it coming, but I didn't. The
well,
cameo.
And he's a natural enough actor. He's not a comic. He's just more of an actor. He's a natural enough actor that where if they were to use that character enough, I think he could probably fade into it enough to where I wouldn't be thinking Winston the whole time.
Yeah.
Right. No, absolutely. Actually, since you mentioned it, with the Ernie Hudson cameo, we also, he is the source of the limousine that they're driving. I'm sorry, not the limousine, the hearse.
The hearse, yeah.
And I really like the fact that this movie did something that also, oddly enough, the Addams Family movies did, which is act in a sense as an origin story for certain elements that we're accustomed to. And I know I bitch about this stuff all the time and I don't like it, but here it worked for me. For instance, the firehouse, which had never dawned on me how expensive a firehouse in Manhattan would be, and it's hilarious that they actually look at the firehouse and reject it because it's
$21,000 a month.
Yes. And that by the end they get it, but the reason why is they're now government agents, which is kind of a neat idea.
Well, they're government sponsored anyway.
Sure.
Which, I'm sure government officials are going, yeah, because we have that much money lying around to throw at people. But anyway, yeah, Cecily Strong was an interesting little, assistant character who shows up there at the end. She shows up throughout, but she's the one who says, "We'll give you anything because you saved us." But then she turns around. That was kind of a funny choice where the government's all like, "Oh, you guys are the best. You saved us, but we have to deny you in public because we have to, and we can't allow mass hysteria." I thought that whole thing was kind of a fun little subplot.
So the only other thing that really bugged me as we're going through this was the villain at the point where he just kind of becomes I wish there was more, maybe there was in some cut, I wish there would have been more ghost version of the villain, because he's kind of buffoonish and he's funny and effective that way, but I never really got, even when they're shooting at him and stuff, he's kind of not seen. I don't know if it's budget-wise or whatever. I personally would have liked to have seen less possessed Hemsworth villain and more of this guy who's arguably going to bring about this, apocalypse.
I don't
know if any of you guys felt that way, but that was the only other thing that I wrote down as I was, thinking about this.
I will say the thing that is interesting about Rowan, the villain in this, versus Vigo and Gozer, is that he's unlike the villains in the previous incarnation of Ghostbusters. He starts out as a product of human malice. He's a human supervillain. He even has folded behind. He folds his arms behind his back like Darkseid from New Gods, and it's
he's
that's
interesting. He's like, what's his name in The Incredibles?
I'm gonna remember it when we're done recording.
He's got an S on his chest.
Syndrome.
Syndrome. Yeah, he's like Syndrome.
Oh, totally. And they had a missed opportunity here, but because of the nature of Gozer being this sort of demigod from another dimension, his/hers motivation in the original Ghostbusters is pretty inscrutable. Vigo, is a little bit more of a fleshed out villain, but because he's one of the things that makes him memorable is that he's a painting, but it also makes him, again, it's difficult to relate to that. Here, they had a very missed opportunity to finally give us a villain that, you know, you could actually sink your teeth into a little bit. And I think he is interesting at first, but we don't really get enough.
Yeah, and that's
we don't really get enough of him.
I kind of wish there was more super villainry from this character, who's, like I said, has a lot of, like, there's a lot of bits where I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And by the end, though, I felt that they kind of dropped it. Whatever.
He's just a stepping stone to the whole, to why he's an excuse to why there's more ghosts. That's all he is. I mean, he's not meant to be really the villain. He's meant to be the opener of the door, the keymaster, you know, of the door for the.
He does turn into essentially the giant. Every Ghostbusters movie has to end with a giant sting. You know, that's the structure of these movies, apparently. And he becomes that.
Stay Puft Marshmallow Man is also in it. But yeah.
I want to say the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man from the trailers was one of the things I was so up in arms about, because I thought he looked weird and off-putting. And then when I finally saw the movie, I was like, oh, okay, he looks like that because he's a balloon. Yeah. Like that I was like, well, that makes sense then, because like I was like, why does Mr. Stay Puft look so weird? You know, like.
Yeah.
Hello?
Did we lose you?
The sequence when they're there with their proton packs and the balloons are coming towards them, and they have to shoot one or the other before the balloons reach them. I was watching that whole sequence and going, I want to play that. Honestly, that is.
I want to point out though something I was thinking about though. I feel like the consistency of how the equipment works is much better in the original films, because like in the original films you have the line of logic that you weaken the ghost and pull it in with a proton pack, and then you trap it.
Ray was like, she's definitely not as big a fan as you. She pointed that out on the way home. She's like, wait, sometimes it does this and sometimes it does that.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of funny. Again, you know, she's a pretty good everyman as far as, you know, hey, I like what I like. I'm not a huge fan of these movies, but I like them. And that was one of the things she was pointing out as well, but I thought it was interesting.
Sure. Well, I mean, it's something that matters to me. Even I thought the new packs were very cool looking. They had kind of like a steampunk aesthetic to them. But you know, I missed that consistency because I felt like, you know, I felt like Harold Ramis and Dan Aykroyd in the original must have like really thought out like this is the way this equipment worked. And the funny thing is like this movie they didn't even really have to think that hard. Like it had all been thought out, but by the end of the movie, you know, it was just they were essentially ray guns, and they didn't have to trap the ghost. They could just, if they zapped the ghost hard enough, it would just knock them out. And you know, maybe you know we can fan wank that and go, well, it's a different universe, so the proton guns work slightly different. But I just think that was a consistency error.
By the way, I have a theory that they are just sending, that the reason that we're in a parallel universe is because we literally are in a parallel universe, and they're just sending the ghosts back and forth between the Ghostbusters universes.
They're in the containment unit.
Oh my God, what a crazy idea! Like the containment unit is a black hole, and basically the ghosts are popping back and forth.
Yeah, they're just going. Well, when they opened up that portal.
That's kind of wonderful. I like that.
But
maybe that explains why there's people that look like the original Ghostbusters in this universe.
Yo, absolutely. Absolutely. There are people that would have been the original Ghostbusters, maybe had their universe tilted in that way.
Exactly.
Just like Earth 2 happened, the Heroes of Earth 2 happened 40 years earlier than the Heroes of Earth 1.
I sort of love the idea of Winston Zeddemore being a funeral director. I think that's genius.
I liked
the climax of the movie. You know, like I felt like that the giant ghost didn't look too great, but you know, the big battle where they were fighting all the ghosts, like that was cool.
I thought it was really good, and I mean, because the thing is, it's a comedy, so it's meant to be silly. It's not meant to look,
Well, no. I don't have a problem with it being whimsical looking because I mean that's the franchise. Like Ghostbusters. Ghostbusters throughout all of its incarnations, like the ghosts are slightly strange and whimsical. Like I just feel like the CG was not quite as accomplished on that particular character.
That's interesting. No, it worked for me because it was supposed to look like a cartoon ghost from a logo that's coming to life.
Right.
Worked for me, but regardless, once they introduced yet another final part of the finale, which is once they get rid of that thing, then they've got this vortex they need to deal with. And I have to say that I did enjoy the, Aaron going to save
that's very poltergeist.
It was very poltergeist. Yeah.
Yeah.
Worked for me. Works for me always. I'm always a sucker for that. That was totally fine.
No, I like that too.
Yeah, I thought it was sweet.
I mean, it was unrealistic to pick a little thing. It was unrealistic that for whatever reason, the ghost, the big bad ghost, falls faster than Melissa McCarthy does. But that's just whatever. It's just me being nitpicky. Because once he lets go, then he's suddenly falling way faster. She's able to catch up to Melissa McCarthy.
Well, maybe her inner light keeps her back
buoyant
towards the world of towards the mortal world.
That could be. That's a good. I like that.
Thank you.
But yes, but I loved, like I said, I loved the ghost, the big, tall, skinny ghost that looks like Jack Skellington. I thought he was awesome.
I liked how Slimer has a girlfriend now. I kind of dug that.
I like all the ghosts that are taking the hearse for a joyride. They're so funny.
Slimer just wants to party, I think that's really, like what they were just showing us what we've all known deep down is that Slimer's not such a bad guy. He just wants to hook up with undead chicks and hang out with his ghost bros and maybe drive a fast car around.
That was great. That was a wonderful way to find something to happen with the hearse for the remainder of the
Well, they finally explained what all that stuff on the top of Ecto-1 is, because like it's always been on the top of the car, but we've never quite known what it does.
Yeah. And I have to say, normally, again, this stuff bugs the crap out of me. I really don't like it when movies explain. But I found all the explanations here. I don't know, maybe I'm just being overly...
it's not really, to be honest with you, it's not really explaining, because why the hell does she have a nuclear reactor on top of the car?
Yeah.
Mad science.
To power
because she's a mad scientist.
Yeah, she is a mad scientist for sure.
So we should probably go to our final thoughts, but it's been a lot of fun discussing Ghostbusters 2016. So the order that we went in was Tony, Julia, Drew, and I'll go. So final thoughts, then we come around for endorsements. So Tony, final thoughts on Ghostbusters 2016.
Like I said, I didn't love the movie. I liked it. I thought it was way better than I expected from the trailers, which looked abysmal, and I thought I was going to have to take one for the team in order to just sit through this. I'm glad I brought Rain because it was really cool to go out and discuss the movie and everything, and to get her not as much of a fan kind of perspective on things. I think it's kind of sad that it's harder to judge this movie and to actually discuss it as a movie because of so much just crap from all sides. That part is crummy. But, I enjoyed it. I laughed a decent amount. I had problems with chunks of it, but I like all the actresses in it, and, there's some great bits. It's not going to be up there in my, all-time favorites list, but it certainly was much better than I hoped. And, and again, like I said, people, there's some things that are for you and some things that maybe aren't for you. And if people are, like Drew said, if people are like female Ghostbusters as opposed to Harley Quinn or any number of people that you could pick in the pantheon of famous actors, actresses, characters, this is a pretty good one to have Like, everybody's competent. Everybody, like, you know, kicks ass in the movie. Everybody's smart. That's, you know, that's pretty cool. So, my friends with daughters, I think that's pretty awesome. And they're scientists, which double awesome to me. So.
Yeah.
Outstanding. Julia, what are your final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I already said that. Well, I have felt really heartbroken a lot over the last few months as to how much hatred there is, and how much overt racism and all that there is out there, and that certainly is being brought to light again with this, in the on the internets. But I did like it a lot more than I thought I was going to. I really, really enjoyed the humor. I enjoyed all the actors. I enjoyed Chris Hemsworth. I wanted to say Steve Higgins makes an appearance there as the dean, which is really, he was pretty clever, not hilarious, but fun, and I enjoy him a lot.
That was pretty funny. I mean, it's so crass, and like it just works though. I like.
Yeah, he was fun, and also that I was going to mention that over the closing credits, they have this hilarious dance sequence of Chris Hemsworth kind of directing everyone and as he's possessed, and he's kind of directing all the cops and everything. He's got control of them, and so he's kind of making them do stuff. And so there's a really funny dance sequence that's actually choreographed by Twitch, who I'm a big fan of too. So there was a lot of stuff in it for me personally. I mean, a lot of actors I like, a lot of little fun things. So all that made it more enjoyable. I thought it looked pretty good, and it just makes me sad that it's getting so much hatred, and I just don't. It just makes me sad. I don't get it. So I do encourage people to judge for themselves and not let other people tell you what to think.
Excellent. Drew, I know this is like, since the original is your favorite movie or comedy movie? Anyway.
Movie, period. Straight up.
Period. All right. So, final thoughts, Ghostbusters 2016.
Well, I just want to throw this out there along the lines of what Julie and Tony were saying, is that time will tell if we'll see if in a few years whether or not history is kind to this incarnation of Ghostbusters or not. I never thought we were going to get a third Ghostbusters movie. Jury's still out on whether or not we'll get any more. But if this is all there is, I'm okay with that, because I really enjoyed this. I've enjoyed, the conversation that we've had tonight, and I'm gonna enjoy getting this movie on Blu-ray when it comes out. And I want to use this as my passing thought. So when my wife and I went out, into the lobby after the movie was over in the Alamo Draft House, there's a big air up of the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man in the lobby, and I wanted to, of course, get my picture with it. And as we walked closer, we realized there was a little girl there with her mom, and she was kind of playing with the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, and it was very cute. And I believe she was either had just gotten out of another showing or was waiting for the next showing. But I approached her, and I was like, hey, can I borrow your friend here for a second? I want to get a picture with him. And she got very quiet and moved a little bit away from me. And I took a very goofy picture of me hugging the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. And then when I was done, I looked down, and she was kind of looking up at me with a smirk on her face, and she said, in probably the most highest-pitched voice I could imagine, I ain't afraid of no ghost. And when I said to her,
that's awesome.
I said, all yours, kid, and, started to walk off. And then after I left, it took, and if I may be a little bit flowery and poetic for a second, I started thinking about, all yours, kid. As fans, we have a tendency to love something and to the point of where we can smother it.
Yeah.
If I had one final thought on this movie is if that little girl is affected even a fraction as much as I was affected by the original Ghostbusters, I am really glad this movie got made, because I think that that's magical and wonderful. And, you know, it's anybody who grew up in the age of home media knows movies like this have a tendency to stick around. People like them. And I'm willing to share Ghostbusters with kids now. Like, it's not just, my version is set in stone. My memories are set in stone. No movie can ruin my childhood. My childhood is still there. I hope that this movie makes some good childhoods for some other kids.
Delightful. I'll be brief because it's very difficult to follow that. That was really lovely.
Well, thank you.
You know, I was thinking about the fact that Guy Ritchie is a very talented director, and Guy Ritchie made Man from U.N.C.L.E. I should have watched Man from U.N.C.L.E., but I had no interest in watching Man from U.N.C.L.E., so I didn't watch it. I didn't need a new Man from U.N.C.L.E. For me, you know, Robert Vaughn and David McCallum is all I really needed for that part, for those parts, and so I'm good. But a lot of people were like, hey, that was really good. You're missing out on something major. And I think that might be a work here, too. There are probably some people who are like, you know what, I'm good. I'm good with my old thing. I don't need a new one. I know we live in a world where there's been a lot of really great remakes. I think nobody in the world would think that Maltese Falcon shouldn't exist, even though it's a remake of Satan Met a Lady. You know, there's nobody out there who's like, boy, The Fugitive with Harrison Ford, we didn't need that, because that's a good movie. So there's plenty of room for good reimaginings, and I think this one stands up pretty well. So I got one last final thought. You brought up, and we can discuss this if we want, but you brought up Harley Quinn, and I got to say, the one interesting thing about that comparison to me is that Harley Quinn seems to exist in my imagination for the male gaze.
There are tons of women who love Harley Quinn. And I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying in terms of role models, she's not it.
I saw many Harley Quinns at the Denver Comic-Con. But there is no character like that in this movie, interestingly enough. I mean, I think it's interesting. There are none of these four characters is a Harley Quinn-style sex pop. It just doesn't exist in the universe. Isn't that odd?
In fact, they call that out and like, hey, how's it, you know, walking around with those shoes all day?
Yeah, that's true. Right.
You know, that's cool.
She's already sacrificing herself to meet male expectations.
She's also dressed very primly, and then the professor or the head or dean or whatever he is, played by Charles Dance, accuses her of being dressed too sexually.
Well, he doesn't say what it is that he objects to. He just says,
you might
think
about
your
she
clothes.
Dresses too much like a nerd. It's unclear what Charles Dance's problem is. And because the movie's not really interested in what he might have to say, we don't even ever find out.
Right.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Like, who cares? It's so much its own thing. It's so, as Tony pointed out correctly, it is so uninterested in inviting in the perspective of males. I think it's interesting. I think it's refreshing in that way. So who knows what they'll do in the sequel? You know. So let's do endorsements. I totally want to hear what you guys have going on, what you might want us to pay attention to. So going back again, Tony, I mean, you've been in Scotland. I don't know if you had time to absorb anything other than Ghostbusters, but what do you want to lay on us?
Oh, man, and I know this has the potential to be overhyped, so be prepared. Stranger Things on Netflix. I am not very far into it, but everybody I know has started picking it up, and so there's going to be a backlash where people are like, it's not that good, it can't live up to the hype. But, man, it really, really, if you are a fan of the things that we talk about, if you are a fan of Spielberg, if you're a fan of Stephen King, of Lovecraft, of all the things we love on this show, Stranger Things, especially if you grew up in the 80s, or you want to see what the 80s really did look like, because it looks like that, holy moly. And this very John Carpenter-esque score that live in Austin, which I think is really rad. I hope to meet them at some point. But Stranger Things, really, really good in a way that, like I said, people are going to tell you, like, you're going to see, like, a kabillion Facebook posts and go, it can't be that good. But it's pretty damn good.
Tony, I'm also watching it, and I will second your bump up about it. Like, it's super creepy, super good, and I mean, hell, we've just been talking about Ghostbusters. Like, if you like 80s pop culture, this show's going to be your jam.
I mean,
right?
and also, like, if you felt a kinship with, going back to the director, if you felt a kinship to Freaks and Geeks, this has you covered. If you, all of that stuff just is done. So it's also, aptly so, I think it's what Super 8 kind of wishes it could have been.
Oh, yeah.
And I like Super 8 all right, but this, like, you're like, oh, yeah, this is that, but so much better.
It's also what every Stephen King miniseries wishes it was.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, absolutely. And it's got all the hallmarks.
I love that it's
got all the hallmarks
logo,
without,
by the way.
like, being ironically Hallmark about it. And that's hard to do. So.
Plus, Winona Ryder is actually really good in it.
Yeah, she's amazing. It's great.
I have not seen it, but I want to see it. I love that it has the Stephen King logo. It looks like all the. Well,
the chapter titles are also very Stephen King.
Jason, you're gonna flip out when you see the title, like,
that's cool.
Scroll, like how they all put it together. It's perfect. It's
outstanding. Julia, what do you have to endorse for us?
I don't know. I can't think of anything. I was trying to think of what.
Would you be? Well, let me ask you this. One thing we did watch, and I don't have to endorse it, but I'm just curious what you were thinking. We started watching the new HBO program, the night of.
Oh yeah, that was interesting. We just watched the one episode, and it does look. It was gripping already, just because. Well, like you were saying, Jason, that it was like serial in fiction TV form.
Yeah.
Because you are kind of like, okay, this can't possibly be what it looks like, and yet it really looks bad. So I don't know how it's not going to be what it looks like, but it can't be, because that would just be too easy, and there's too many other little things. So what is it, in fact? Because it's a murder mystery kind of thing. It's like if you like, I guess I could endorse, actually. I don't know if I did ever before, but Broadchurch, which is David Tennant, the British version of the David Tennant murder mystery show, and then Grace Point, which is the American one with also David Tennant. That's the same kind of thing, where it's sort of going to be a season-long
it's a procedural
exploration of what happened to this person, and
Yeah.
So it's really interesting if you like that kind of thing, and I do.
In this case, you have this young man, a young college student who is very sort of innocent but curious, and he gets invited to a wild party in downtown, and so his parents won't let him go. He borrows his dad's cab to go to the party. He doesn't know enough about the cab to know how to turn off the duty light on the top of the cab, and so when this hot girl gets in the cab, he naturally decides to drive her around. They end up having this fling, and then when she winds up dead, and he can't remember exactly what happened in her apartment, everything looks really bad for him. And he also has a tendency to make colossally bad mistakes, not just including the ones I just listed to you, but also others, including, for instance, doing things with murder weapons that you shouldn't do with murder weapons, and so forth. It is really good.
And then he just has really bad luck.
He has terrible luck. Yes. Yeah. So I do the night of. I'm sorry to give you your endorsement.
No, that was a good one.
But I got one more, and that is that Clockworks by Tony and me comes out in September in paperback. And this is the English language version of Clockworks, which has the weirdest This is literally the comic book with the weirdest production history in the history of comics. It's
Holy cow.
It's a script.
That's a bold thing to claim, Jason.
But
I don't know if in the history of comics, but definitely like it has been.
I will make that claim. It is. I mean, as far as a professionally published, non-self-published comic, this is a script. The just a mere part of it. It is a script that we wrote originally as a screenplay in English. We sold it to a French company who had us rewrite it in English. It then got translated into French, came out in French, went through serious rewrites, and now came out again in English, and we went through and did rewrites to fit the original script to the French version. So the current version you're reading is actually an English language adaptation of a French script adapted from an original screenplay by Tony and Jason.
No, you missed one. It's an English adaptation of the French translation of your English
Screenplay.
comic book. That's the adaptation of the screenplay.
Yeah. My head hurts.
Also, with a side step through multiple languages such as Italian and German before it came out in English.
Yeah.
But you don't forget Drew has to do his.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Drew, what do you got for us?
Well, since my endorsement last week was part of our Lost episode, which I hope we get to re-record one day, I'm gonna re-endorse the real Ghostbusters. Which the one great thing that I think we can all agree about is when they do one of these remakes that is nostalgia based, they flood the store shelves with stuff that will tickle your nostalgia buttons. And in this case, they brought back the real Ghostbusters on very affordable DVDs and Blu-rays, which you can get in most every grocery store in town, near as I can tell. I've only bought 2 volumes of it, but I'm planning on getting them all. What a great show this was, with a good sense of character design, really good writing, decent animation, and some of the episodes were actually very, creepy and way more challenging than what you would expect from a Saturday morning cartoon in the era of Bush and Reagan. So it's been really great to revisit it. Some of the episodes I remembered a lot better than others, but there's some that they started coming back to me while I was watching it, and there's been others where it's just kind of like watching them brand new for the first time. But it's just been ridiculously fun to revisit this show, especially since Ghostbusters has been such a part of the national conversation this last week. It's nice to kind of look at it from a more innocent lens, which in this case is a Saturday morning cartoon from the 1980s. So my endorsement is that if you come across these DVDs, you should purchase them, because come on, it's the real Ghostbusters. And I'm not saying that they're the real Ghostbusters. It's literally the title of the show. Speaking of Mindfield.
Because to cash in on it back in the day, they try to bring back the Ghostbusters.
Yeah, the Filmation Ghostbusters.
The Filmation Ghostbusters, which is based on Ghostbusters, the live action.
Larry Storch, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Well, yeah, it was actually 2 guys from F Troop. I only vaguely remember the Filmation.
I do see, the Alamo was running clips of it before I watched the new one, and I've seen clips of it here and there. I've never, as obsessed with Ghostbusters as I am, I've never had the patience to track it down.
Although I've seen some clips that show that it might not be as unbearable as I was thinking, but I'm sure it's not very good.
It's not good.
Yeah.
And also,
the real question is, if we were to go back and watch a lot of that stuff, like Lost Saucer with Ruth Buzzy and Jim Nabors, which, by the way, is definitely due for a reboot, would it be funny or not? I mean,
they reboot, if they can reboot Starsky and Hutch, they can reboot anything. Look, if the real Ghostbusters can hold up to adult scrutiny, I think just about anything can.
Excellent. Well, there was a whole bunch of those things, actually. Yeah, it'd be fun to watch, like, a bunch of them together, because there was The Lost Saucer, there was Ghostbusters, there's Far Out Space Nuts. Far Out Space Nuts. That's
There was Monster Squad. There was Monster Squad, and not to be confused with 1980s Monster Squad.
I loved Monster Squad. Let me tell you, I was a huge fan of Monster Squad. I had a board game of Monster Squad. I was, huge fan of Monster Squad. Not a good show, but it worked for me in 1976. When I was 4. So there you go. All right. It has been delightful discussing Ghostbusters 2016. We have a feeling that the conversation will continue on the Facebook page. I know a lot of you are eagerly anticipating this particular episode. Let us know what you thought.
If we didn't hate it enough, we apologize.
Yeah. Or vice versa. Like,
yeah.
I go back to how charged it is. I hope that, just because I take things personally, like, I hope what I have said is the right thing, not to go, was that politically correct? But, like, I hope what I'm trying to come across doesn't come off as like, what would you know, or this isn't for you, or whatever. And I really try to be objective as possible, because I'm still in awe of just why jerks ruin it for everybody.
Tony, I can't speak for the internet, because the internet be crazy, but I think you came across as very reasoned and reasonable in the way you spoke.
Yeah, absolutely. So come to the Facebook page. Let us know what you thought. Leave us reviews on iTunes. Leave us reviews. We totally want to hear from you. We absolutely want to hear from you. We read everything. It's really sad. We probably shouldn't, but we do. So we totally want to hear from you. Have a fabulous week, and everybody, we'll talk to you next week. Bye.
Take it easy.
Night.
Night.